Hey guys, we're back. This time we're going to take a look at Tiny Epic Tactics by Gameling Games. It's the second in the Tiny Epic series that I've gotten a hold of, and I really love this one. The fantasy kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy Tactics or any kind of strategy tactical game. And I love the theme to it, and it really interested me. And then the components and everything in here are really cool. It's kind of exceeded my expectations in some areas, but a little below them in others. And we'll get right in and check it out. So unlike a lot of the games, this one has a little sleeve. And normally I wouldn't keep these, but you'll see why in a minute. So they made use of every little inch that they could on here. Inside the lid even is an advertisement for the, I want to say expansion, they call it an expansion, but the extra maps that are available, and we'll get to that. First thing we have here is our rule book, and as with the other Tiny Epic games, this one's a little bit thicker. I think it's 28 pages, and because of the type of game it is, there's a lot of different rule sets in here. I think there's 4 or 5 different game types, and they have a section for setup here. Shows you how to set up the base map, which we'll get to. Turn order, some special rules, and there's a page for melee and ranged attack, magic attacks, and tactic cards. How to secure an area, it's kind of a capture the flag type game, or take and hold. So different game modes, there's a competitive team play mode, there's a free-for-all battle, there's a team free-for-all, down there, team battle. There's a solo adventure mode, which I like, which changes up a few of the rules and adds some new stuff. I think the rest of the book is actually about that solo mode, which is kind of cool. And then there's a cooperative adventure mode in the back. I forgot about that one. So kind of cool. There's a quick reference guide on the back as to what the different icons mean. A lot in a little book. So if you back this on Kickstarter, there was a expansion. I don't know if this comes with all of the games, but I know it came with the Kickstarter version, so we're going to set that aside for now. And then in here we have our player bags. I separated all this stuff out. It kind of comes all jumbled up in the box. I gotta get better bags for these because these are terrible, but they were just ones I had laying around. So each of your players is going to get a set of meeples. And they're very cool design ones. There's our rogue. He's kind of an archer. There's the beast. Kind of looks like a werewolf. There is a warrior, which is like a knight. And then there's a spellcaster, wizard. Then you're going to get a bunch of these other ones here. This blue one is a little potion bottle. That's how you keep track of your wizard's mana. There's a quiver of arrows. I think all of the rogues get it, and all of the warriors, I want to say, get a ranged attack, so they get the quivers. And then you have 4 of these little heart icons, which are used to keep track of your hit points for your different members. And these all come in big bags. I separated them out and color-coded the teams, so I don't have to do it every game. I can just hand people a bag and they get everything they need for their team. Not fond of the red and green. One of the most common colorblind ailments in the world, and people keep using them as playable characters. These, I think I could tell the difference, but in the different lighting, who knows. Not a big fan of red and green. So in this bag we have our various other components here. All wood tokens, which I love. And this one has 3 different flags for the capture the flag, checkpoint control aspect of the game. And they're all different cuts too. They're not just repainted, which is kind of funny. They took the time and effort for that. And I think there's 10 of these. These are weakened tokens. And you have so many actions you can spend on your characters. If you basically if you use the same character twice, they become weakened and they can't do anything unless you lose health in order to get rid of these weakened tokens. There's other ways to get those as well. Next we have our dice. These are pretty nice. They're really light, but they're engraved. They have like a marbled design, which is kind of cool, but all of the symbols are engraved and pretty easy to figure out. That's knockback. It's a picture of a guy getting knocked back. These involve your spells, and the arrows, the broken arrow involves your ranged attacks. And unlike most games, you don't roll to attack in this. All your attacks have a set amount, and you roll specific dice to either cause extra knockback for your melee attacks, to see if you miss. If you miss, it costs extra ammo for range, or your spells do various things depending on rolling these, which I think you have to spend extra mana to get. There are these little tactic cards, and these allow you to do different things to basically change up the game and give you little advantages throughout. And I think you get a hand of 2 of these throughout the game, which allows you to do various things, basically change things up a little bit, do something unpredictable. Probably the coolest thing here are the characters, and because of the size of the box, you wouldn't expect there to be much. There's quite a variety here, and all your character cards also have a backside for when you're playing in solo. They have different stats, and a front side for when you're using them as characters. They're broken up into types up here, which match the meeple. So you have your warriors. There's what, 8 different ones, all with a special ability down here. Different types of attacks down the side. Your health is here, and their ranged weapons are there. And they have cute artwork as well. Some people aren't a fan of the art style. I like it. And then you also have another group of those. I think there's 8 per each. So you have your spellcasters. Now some of these are healers. Some are, like this one's a mage, uses fireballs. That curses people. There's a healer. So there's all different types of them as well. And these guys, instead of having the ranged attack, have the mana over here. Cost you so much mana to cast the spell. So you look at your spell, and it's going to cost you 1 to cast the spell, and an additional 1 to 3 if you want to roll extra dice. It has a range of 5. And interesting abilities on those. And we have our scouts. And again, there's 8 of those to choose from. And your scouts have a melee and a ranged ability, and then again they all have, some have 1, some have 2 special abilities that all do various things. And then you have your beasts, which again there's 8 more of those. Most of these guys, I think if not all, are pure melee based, and then they have their special abilities. So you have 4 different character types, 8 characters of each type. You can mix and match those to create your team that you're going to use. And then they're represented on the field by your meeples. And the field is where this really comes in a unique aspect to the game. The map itself is this cloth, which some people like, some people hate. The corners tend to roll up, like you can see here, because they keep it rolled in the box. I'm not sure. I'm going to try folding mine. I think creases are easier to deal with than the rolled corners. But you lay this out, and it creates the base of what you're going to play on. And again, I'm not sold on the cloth thing. I like the fact that it fits in the box and it makes things bigger and easier to deal with here. But at the same time, it tends to crease and fold weird, and only time will tell how well it's going to hold up. But they also have all these other boxes, and this game uses every single little bit I think I have it upside down here. And try to set it up the way it's supposed to be. Put your map here like this. I may need the book for reference because I haven't done this enough times to memorize it yet. So all these little things in here, which are your storage drawers basically that keep your stuff, are also components to build the map. And you have the bottom of the box, which is why it has a sleeve on it, also has terrain as well as the sides. So like this, you line up here with that arrow on the map, and that becomes a hill. And then you got this box here, which goes on top like that. And it builds out and it ends up becoming a full 3D terrain like you would see in a game like Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics or something like that. There's even a little castle that goes there. And the cave goes there like that. So there you go, that's your setup board. And then I don't know if it'll show up on camera, but in these corner sections here, there's one here, one there, one up on top of here. Yeah, it spreads the two. It's up here and down here, and then there's one in this corner. And that's where you're going to set up your starting points. You put your 4 guys anywhere on those. If you're doing a 2-player game, you're going to end up putting 2 here and 2 kitty corner. And then the different squares on the board do different things, like there's trees and forests, which give you protection. There's a village, which you can use to heal yourself. There's a peak, like here. I don't know if you can actually see that. It's like a mountain peak, which gives you unlimited range, basically. There's a little village next to it. Up here, there's a ballista, which allows you to attack people within a certain range. And then you have, like, the top of the castle here has these little flags. And to initiate the starting phase of scoring here, you have to have one guy standing on this bigger space. And then any of these flag places count. If you have a majority on there, it advances the little counter. And there's a track here. So all your flags are going to start over here. Once they're started, they start going up. When they get to here, whoever controls it gets points. And it's kind of a timing game because once they start moving, they move regardless of who's in control. As long as somebody's in definitive control, they will move up each turn. And then it gets to that scoring thing. So if you can wait till they get to here, swoop in, take control, and you'll score on the next round when it goes up again. And then on top of everything we've got there, there's also a deck of cards for the solo game. And what difference between the multiplayer game and the solo game is that in the multiplayer games, you're fighting for control of these points. In the solo games, instead, you're trying to go in any of the places where there's an arrow here, flip over if there's nothing on top, and they become a dungeon. And you're going to fight your way through the dungeon and collect the crystal and back out. So that's kind of a neat little aspect to it. It changes the game up a little bit. It's very difficult solo. I've tried it a few times and failed miserably. And it's just kind of an interesting, fun aspect. I want to play the solo one, the co-op campaign, to see if we can do it better that way. But in the normal multiplayer game, instead of going in the dungeons, all of these arrows where they point to the doors like that become a portal, so you could go in there, come out over here. You can come out any of them, and there's one here, there's 2 up there. So you can kind of teleport around the board with them, so you have to keep that in mind. It makes the board a lot smaller than it seems. And then each of your guys also has, I kind of skipped over the cards here. So you have your health here, which is your tracker. When it gets to 0, you get captured and your opponent takes your guy, and they actually get points for them at the end of the game. They don't respawn, which is kind of sucky. Then each character has a movement, which are different, so you have to keep that in mind, moving around the board. So moving up from one elevation to the next actually costs you an additional movement. Moving onto the ballista costs you an additional movement. Moving up onto the peak costs you an additional movement. Moving down does not cost you anything. If you're on a higher elevation than your target, doesn't matter if you're way up here or just one block up. If you're a higher elevation, you get +1 to your range. If you're attacking someone you're a lower elevation, you get -1 to your range. As I said with the peaks, if you're on the peak, you get unlimited range, which is awesome. And trying to think what other ones there are. There's some bridges on there. They don't do anything. The grass plains don't do anything. The water. If you move into water, it costs you an additional 1 movement every time you enter a water space. But you also take 1 less damage from all attacks because you're in water. Same goes for forests. You take 1 fewer damage from all attacks because you're protected by the forest. So there's a strategy in that. You got to position yourself. The other neat thing is knockback. If you have a guy who's up here, the guy's here, and I hit him and cause knockback, it'll knock him back off of that. You knock back as many spaces as you deal knockback. But if you're here and say, you see that's the problem with the cloth mat. They don't like to stand up. So if you're here and here, and I knock you back, you'll go here, but you won't go up. If I knock you back twice, you'll go here once, and then you're going to hit that wall. So that's another thing in positioning. You want to position yourself so that your attacks make the most optimal damage. Knock people out of position if they want to be up here on this ledge and you knock them off. They've got to spend the movement to get back up there to do what they wanted to do. Knocking people out of the scoring area for the flags is another strategy. Knocking them out of range. If they're a melee class, you knock them out of range and then they can't counter because they don't have the range now. So there's a lot of strategy involved, a lot of tactics, and that's good. That's what the game's based on, and I really like that aspect of it. There's a lot of customization with the number of different characters there are and the mix and matching, the fact that you get 1 of each class. It is a shame that you're forced to take 1 of each class though, so you can't customize a team more to your liking. I'm sure you could house rule something like that, and we haven't really gotten to the point where we needed to do that or wanted to try it yet, but it seems easy enough to do. The big deal, though, is that there's no respawn, so you got to keep in mind when you do lose a troop, especially in a multiplayer game, it's really hurtful. And after you start losing a couple guys, you start getting more actions. So at the beginning of the game, you have 3 actions you can take, and they all have to be different actions, and you can take them with different guys. So, like, I want to move this guy, his 4 movement. That's 1 action. Then I can take this guy and make a ranged attack, or I can make this guy move too. You can't use the same thing multiple times with the guy, so like he couldn't move again. But if he decides, okay, now I want to attack with him, then he gets 1 of these weakened tokens. And you can put it on him, or you put it on the card more likely. And it represents the fact that now he's weakened because he took more than 1 action. If you can't go to use a guy who has a weakened token, so at the end of the turn you actually have to pay 2 health to get rid of that weakened token, or they can't do anything for the entire round, and the following turn the weakened token goes away and they go back to normal. As you start to lose guys though, as a bonus, when you're reduced to 2 guys left, so instead of your 4 and you have your 3 actions, when you're down to 2 guys, you can immediately remove all their weakened tokens, so you get rid of any of these that they already have, and they're no longer weakened by taking multiple actions, so you could move with a guy, then attack with a guy, and you don't get a weakened token for that. However, you're still limited to only 2 actions per guy, and they can't be the same. Now when you're down to only 1 guy left, meaning you're in pretty bad shape, pretty much all the restrictions go away. You can take all 3 actions with this guy, and all 3 can be the same action if you want. So you can move once and make 2 ranged attacks, or sit still and make 3 ranged attacks if you want, or melee attacks, whatever. Just said range because it happens to be a scout, but as long as you have the ammo or whatever you need to make those attacks, you can keep doing it. It's kind of to compensate for the fact that you've only got 1 guy left, so they make him buff him up a little bit. He's a little more powerful. As I said, when you lose a guy to your opponent, they keep your guy. They get bonus points for having them at the end of the game. You get bonus points for capturing their guys at the end of the game. You also get points for the flags that you've controlled at the end of the game, as well as any of the villages on the map. So I don't know if you can see there. You get a better look at the peak on the bottom there and the village on the top. If you have one of your guys occupying a village come the end of the game, you're going to get extra points for that too. So there's a lot of strategy involved in positioning where you want your guys to be and how you want to do your attacks. You don't want to expose yourself to make an attack where you're going to get a counterattack that's going to wipe you out. So you really have to think strategically, and again, these tactic cards come into play to give you little bonuses and advantages for certain things. And the tactic cards are basically broken up into, there's a couple different types, but they all have this if and then. So as long as the top requirement is met, you can play the card, and then the bottom requirement tells you what to do, and then you discard them. And also in this case, if you're playing in certain game modes, you're going to remove certain cards from your deck. So you have to check that stuff real quick. If you draw a card like that in a game where you're not supposed to, you just toss it aside, draw another one. That's what we do instead of pulling them all out of the deck each time. That's a quick look at Tiny Epic Tactics, though. There's a lot in there. I really like the way that the game uses every component to build up this map. You can even customize on the flip side of the base. There's another map that doesn't have the arrows, and you can really customize how you wanted to place these and move them around. The only thing I think they say is you can't have 3 high like that, but you can mix and match and build your own map however you want them to design your own games too, because no one says you have to do it the way that they did. This is just a suggested layout for the battle, because it makes things pretty even. Like down here you start pretty much in the open, but you got nice open to get to where you want to go, whereas up here you're starting on top of this hill, but it's rougher terrain to get anywhere. I think there's a village near each of the spawn points that you can get to relatively easily, so it's kind of balanced out. If you bought the game on Kickstarter, it came with this. I don't know if the retail version comes with this. They may include it in all of them now. And that's the Lanterns expansion here. And it comes with a bunch of tokens, which I apparently can't pick up. It comes with a bunch of tokens here and some tactic cards. And basically what you're going to do at the beginning of the game is you're going to take these lanterns and you're going to put them this way on each of the villages. And then each player gets one of these torch things that goes off to the side. Whenever one of your players goes through one of the portals, they're going to get a lit torch. And you put this on that specific character's card, they become a torchbearer. Then if that player carrying the torch goes into a village that has an unlit torch, they flip it over. They take this, put it on their player area. They lose the torch because they used it. And they, instead of gaining only 4 health from being in the village, they gain 6 that turn. And they gain a lantern, which is worth victory points at the end of the game. They also have use in the solo game for lighting a torch, moves the time tracker back, giving you a little bit of extra time. But it's a neat little expansion, and you get enough lanterns for each of the villages, as well as 4 torches, 1 for each of your characters. And the expansion also comes with a handful of new tactic cards. Surround the enemy, fashion a makeshift raft, discover an ancient portal, and scout out the shot. And those just get shuffled into your normal tactics deck. Well, that about wraps it up for our look at Tiny Epic Tactics. I really like the game. It's very reminiscent, like I said multiple times, I think, of Final Fantasy Tactics or Vandal Hearts, which was another good one I liked. Shining Force, Fire Emblem. It gives you that feel in the game. Granted, you only control a small squad of 4 guys, but the customization in what you can make. You're supposed to deal these randomly because there are some broken combos you can put together if you get to pick and choose. But we're still learning the game, still learning the combos that work well together. We like to let people just pick the characters they want to use based on the artwork, based on the abilities, things like that. It's just fun for now. Once it becomes an issue and we find some broken stuff, we may go back to randomizing them. But for now, it's fun to be able to pick and choose and build your team. And I like the fact that it plays well with multiple player counts because of the way the portals work. Even odd number counts kind of work well. Usually with a game like this, you play it 2-player, you play it 4-player. There, 3 usually doesn't work too well because 2 guys start here, 1 guy starts over here. Well, these 2 are going to go at it, and this guy is going to slowly work his way over. Well, thanks to the portals, you can jump right up there with them. It kind of negates that to an extent. I still think better off 2v2 or a 4-player free-for-all. I do like the 1-player scenario play and the little crystals that you're trying to collect. But I will say it is extremely difficult, at least at first. Maybe once you get a pattern worked out and you figure out how there's a system to it, once you've figured that out, it might get easy. But for now, I'm having a fun struggling playing with that. Keep getting my butt kicked, but I'm working on it. Overall, though, it's a fun game. There's a lot of strategy involved, a lot of tactics, and lives up to what the game should be. The kind of thing that disappoints me a little is that I would love to see this in a full ironed out format. Because of the limitations of being tiny epic game and fitting in those tiny little boxes, you're also limited in the fact that you just have plain wood meeples. I could see this being played on a full, 1 or 2 inch grid board with an actual player board as the bottom and these as bigger chunks in a full-size box with full-size minis and having the minis actually represent the artwork on the cards, kind of Arcadia Quest stylish. There's so much more they could do to this in a full-fledged box-size game. And I'd love to see somebody take this concept, this idea, using the box itself as components to build the board and roll with it and go with this in a full-size box game. And I think there's a lot of potential there. And as much as I like what this game offers, would absolutely love to see this in a larger scale. That said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the Tiny Epic version here. There's a ton of game in a little box, and that seems to be their thing, and they live up to the reputation. Very happy I picked this one up. Been having a lot of fun with it, and it's definitely something I'm going to see myself keeping around for a while. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for our look at Tiny Epic Tactics. As always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.